Okay, so I have a list of my favorite heavy, slow songs, parts of songs from bands that I still love to this day. But this is all stuff that I heard when it came out, and I've always really loved slower, heavy songs. So, we're going to start with Black Flag, My War, the second side of My War. I've mentioned that a few times in my videos. It's crucial to know that record in tracing the path of heavy, slow punk. Yeah, second side of My War. There's another band, Jerry's Kids, and they were the band from Boston. They had an album called This Is My World, and there's two songs on there, a song called Lost and a song called Raise the Curtain, that were both slower. And out of the blue, you know, just most ripping fast songs, killer fast songs you've ever heard on that album, and then they have these slow songs. And I know that myself and my brother love those songs, and with one of those songs, I think it was Lost, we tried to learn to play, you know, back then. But there just was, you know, in the early 80s, there just was not much slower punk, you know, like even slower parts in punk songs. It was pretty rare, but I'm going to keep going through more here. Okay, so another song on the Negative Approach album, Tied Down, there's a song called Evacuate, and I've always loved that song, and that falls into that same category. And that's just a phenomenal album too. So I mean, like all these albums I'm listing, the whole album are, you know, worth a listen, but I'm pointing at the slower stuff. That okay. Anyway, Tales of Terror LP. There's a song called Romance. That's still, like, I mean, it's probably one of my favorite punk songs ever. Every time I listen to it, I'm like, God, what a great song. What a great song. Okay, so here's one of the metal bands that I have to list. Okay, Celtic Frost. If you listen to Celtic Frost, the early stuff, I mean, it is punk. But there's a song called Procreation of the Wicked. And it is slow and grindy, heavy. It will remind you a little bit of the Melvins. I mean, absolutely. If you know the Melvins music and you listen to that, you'll be like, wow. And Buzz turned me on to Celtic Frost. He made a comp tape for me in 1984 that had Celtic Frost on there. Anyway, so, and that, let's see, what album is that? Can't think of the name of the album. Okay, we're moving on. COC, Animosity. Now, both of the first COC records have really unique slow parts throughout the albums, and again, there's not many bands that did that, you know, that slow. Like, there's a song on Animosity called Lost for Words, and towards about the middle of the song, it goes, I think it's about I looked when I wrote this down, I think it's about 2 minutes and 25 seconds in the song Lost for Words, there's this riff that is like probably one of my favorite riffs ever. I mean, it's like, if you take the time to listen to it, you'll see what I mean. I mean, it's like there's nothing that was going on like that, you know. And the only thing you can compare is the Melvins, and the Melvins were just starting to play slow at that same time, and this predates the Melvins barely. Predates the Melvins playing slow. So I would, yeah, anyway, we'll move on. Okay, so the Adolescents from the 7-inch, there's a song called Things Start Moving. Now, this isn't super slow, but for as early as it is, it's still pretty slow, and it's got kind of like this, there's a little bit of a metal influence to it. But Things Start Moving is my favorite Adolescent song. Definitely worth a listen. Next is NECROS' Conquest for Death. Now, throughout Conquest for Death, there are slower parts. And again, not many bands were doing this at all. This is just one of the albums. You know, it's funny, like, I look back at what I loved, and I mean, a lot of my favorite bands and favorite music were bands that did have slow, heavy riffs throughout the songs, or just were like, had an intensity that just hit me, you know. Anyway, okay, we'll do another video about that. Okay, so NECROS' Conquest for Death. You listen to that whole album, you'll see what I mean. There's, you know, lots of killer slow parts within hardcore songs. Okay, here's another metal album, but again, it's from 1984, and so again, one of my very favorite heavy riffs ever is on this record. So it's a band called Trouble, and the album Psalm 9. And they're considered a kind of a Christian metal band, but I mean, you don't let that sway you from listening to this, you know. I mean, really, like, their lyrics were more just positive. I think that was their thing, because at that time, you know, there was evil lyrics or whatever, you know. So I think they were just kind of going in the opposite direction. I'd be really interested to interview them sometime, or really like get the story of those guys, you know, what was their, you know, what made them go that direction, play like super heavy Sabbathy type stuff. Anyway, the songs are okay, this song, the intro to this song is one of my favorite heavy riffs ever. It's called Revelation, Life or Death, off of Psalm 9. That riff, that first riff, is just absolutely the heaviest ever. And there's another song on there I really love, Victim of the Insane, is really good. But that album, you know, it's very Sabbathy influenced, but they, you know, they have their own. And again, in 1984, you know, there was not much that could compare to the heaviness of that album, you know. Absolutely. Okay, next is I'm going to include this for a couple of reasons. So, Butthole Surfer's Locust Abortion Technician. Now, this album is, it is heavy, and it's heavy in its own way. It's not, you know, I think it was very influential around all the people that I knew. You know, if you saw the Butthole Surfers in, you know, 1986, there was nothing heavier, really. I mean, it was like, wow. You left just with your mind blown, you know. And there was like weird, slower, heavy stuff. Two drummers, you know, two drummers that actually played standing up, and they played together. Anyway, if you look at Butthole Surfers live 1986 and you look at some of their live footage, it's pretty heavy. But I had to include that. I mean, songs like, you know, Graveyard. I mean, it's heavy. Okay, two bands that I'm going to include, but it's not stuff that I ever really gotten into. I know you guys are probably gonna, you know, disagree with me, but believe me, I've listened, and okay, Flipper and St. Vitus, both bands, I've listened to them many times, and I don't know. It's just, both bands I have not been able to take very seriously. You know, I listen to them, I'm kind of like, something makes me just go like, oh, I don't know if I can listen to it anymore. So I always have to turn it off. Okay, two more mentions that are, I'm going to mention them just because they don't really fall into the point that I'm getting to with this video, but close. So TSOL, Dance With Me, that has some interesting stuff on there. That's slower. It's kind of dark. You know, not exactly really heavy, but could be a communal influence with other bands, you know, most definitely. And the first Suicidal Tendencies record, that's got some like interesting, slow, heavy intros, slower songs, you know. I have like simple riffs that kind of like My War or something, where, you know, it's heavy and it's in its own way, and definitely in that genre. But obviously that record is known as a phenomenal, you know, hardcore punk record. But there is some interesting slower stuff on there. Maybe not really slow, but once in a while there's intros or whatever that get to that point. Anyway, so that is my list. You know, again, I'm sure I'm missing stuff. You guys might have some of your favorite parts. You know, chime in. But I was really trying to stay in the era of. Most of it's going to be right around 1980. Again, 1982 to 1986. You know, I may have strayed off. I don't think I did, though. I think most of what I just listed is right in that era. You know, I think that's good. You know, and with metal stuff from that era, you know, I didn't really dive into thinking too much about slower, heavy, metal edge stuff that either wasn't, you know, some of it's just like hard to listen to, maybe, you know, like St. Vitus, or it just doesn't quite fit into where my brain, you know, is trying to get to with this video. Anyway, so I'll stop. Thank you. Bye.